If the goal is to win an NBA championship, which should be the goal for every single franchise, I think there's a couple of teams that's headed in the wrong direction. Whether you look at recent personnel moves, whether you're looking at contract extensions, whether you're looking at trades, I think that there's a couple of teams that I've identified that, based on these moves, they're headed in the wrong direction. So in this turn, I'm going to break down why I think that the Washington Wizards and the San Antonio Spurs, based on their recent moves over the last 2 to 3 years, they're not headed in the direction of winning a championship. They're headed in the wrong direction. Welcome back to Journey of a Ballaholic, the best talk show, basketball addicts. I'm your host, General Hannibal X. Now in this journey, I'm going to be breaking down two teams, one from the East and one from the West. From the East, we got the Washington Wizards. The Wizards are a team that is really, I'm kind of baffled by some of the moves that they made over the last couple of years. It all goes back a couple of years ago where they made great draft picks. You got the number one pick in draft, John Wall. You were able to get Bradley Beal. Then they started making some kind of irrational moves. I mean, they drafted Jan Vesely, which totally didn't work out. But they were able to get Otto Porter. Now, I think that was where the beginning of the end for them came, if you want to call it. Drafting Otto Porter was not a bad pick. However, when he became a free agent, a restricted free agent, and the Brooklyn Nets went out there and they offered him a max contract to tie up the Washington Wizards' money, the Wizards fell for that trap and went out there and matched that contract and gave him a full maximum offer. Now, it may not seem like a bad move because you have John Wall, who's a bona fide elite point guard. You had an up-and-coming Bradley Beal, who was showing potential to be a potential star, as absolutely we've seen that he's turned into that. And so Otto Porter was a guy that they drafted with the third pick that they felt like we want to keep our guys together. And I get that. But it's all about for the right price. Because in the NBA, you have a hard cap. You've got that ability where you can't just spend anything that you want to spend. When the Wizards matched that offer that the Brooklyn Nets put on Otto Porter, it hamstrung them from being able to truly build a contender around John Wall and Bradley Beal. In my opinion, in order to win a championship, you've got to have a couple of things. And the most important thing that you have to have is a superstar. Tell me the one team that's won a championship in the NBA that did not have a superstar on it. I'll wait. So at the end of the day, who's going to be that superstar? Is it Bradley Beal? Was it John Wall? At that time, when they gave Otto Porter that contract, they must have assumed that John Wall, who was the better player between the three that they had, was that superstar. And once again, he was a 2010 guy, a guy who was a two-way point guard, a guy who was a consistent perennial all-star. So I understand why they gave him a max contract, but we'll get to that in a bit. Giving Otto Porter that max offer, it took their ability to put a true third option alongside of these two away from them. Then John Wall's contract situation came up. John Wall, to me, was worthy of a max contract. That's not a question. What I think John Wall was not worthy of was what was close to a super max. John Wall should not be making about $40 million a year. He's just not that good of a player. Not to say he's not a great player, especially before his injury. But I think that John Wall was overpaid, and that injury has now made John Wall's contract the worst contract in the NBA. So you're in a situation where, as of last year, they decided to move on from Otto Porter because they realized that the decision to pay him the amount of money that they paid him wasn't worth it. They trade him to the Chicago Bulls and they get Jabari Parker and the big man Bobby Portis. But then this summer, they don't keep either one of those guys. So what do you have to show for Otto Porter, who you felt the need to give a max contract to? You have nothing to show for it. John Wall, who once again, now because of his unfortunate injury, has now the worst contract in the NBA. So you're in a situation where you have Bradley Beal, the only one of those three left that's healthy, that can be a true asset, and was the only asset that they had on their team, and still truly the only asset that they have on their team, as far as from a player personnel standpoint. And the Washington Wizards, as of recently, gave him a 2-year extension. It's going to pay him, I think, $72 million once his contract runs out. So I think at the beginning of like 2021-22 season when that extension will kick in. And it's almost like a 1-and-1 where he have a player option at the end of that second year. And at the end of that year, he has the ability to renegotiate and get a super max deal for 5 years, $266 million. That would make Bradley Beal the highest paid player in NBA history. So I ask you, Bradley Beal is an all-star. Do you think Bradley Beal can be the best player on a championship team? To me, the answer is absolutely, without a question, no. So why pay him that kind of money? Why put that on the table for him to take that kind of money? You paid John Wall as if he was the superstar that could be the best player on a championship team. He can't. John Wall at best is the number 2 option on a title team. Bradley Beal, who's now elevated himself to being the best player on the Wizards, he's now, at best case scenario, a number 2 option on the title team. But you're paying each of them as if they are the best player or worthy of being the best player on a title team. So let's say, for instance, John Wall comes back and he's fully healthy from an Achilles injury, mind you, and he still has athletic ability, which is going to be tough to see. But let's say best case scenario, he comes back as what he was. What he wasn't good enough to get him and Bradley Beal and the Washington Wizards even to the Eastern Conference Finals. So if the goal is to win a championship, I think that the Washington Wizards, it wasn't a good move. It wasn't a good move giving Otto Porter that money. It wasn't a good move giving John Wall or even Bradley Beal this money. Even somebody like Jan Mahimi. Jan Mahimi's on their contract this year, last year of his deal. He's making $16 million a year. $16 million a year. A couple years ago, they gave him a 4-year deal paying $16 per. He's not worth that money. So the Washington Wizards are a prime example of a team that is stuck in mediocrity. A team that they're going to be just good enough when fully healthy. They've been just good enough to make the playoffs, never good enough to win a championship, never good enough to compete for a title, but they weren't bad enough to get a high lottery pick. That's how they got John Wall. That's how they got Bradley Beal, was being bad enough to get those types of players. You never want to be in the middle. You always want to be great and you're competing for championships, or really bad so that you're getting lottery picks. That's where you want to be. The only other place you want to be if you're not in that situation is a situation that the San Antonio Spurs could have been in, but decided not to go in. The San Antonio Spurs recently, as we know, they're one of the teams that has had one of the best histories of winning championships. And how did they get to that position? Well, they were really bad. Let's go back 20 plus years. Back to when they had David Robinson as their best player, who suffered an injury. And because of the injury, they were really bad. Less than, I think maybe like a 25-26 win team. Got the overall number 1 pick the next year, which was Tim Duncan, who turned out to be the greatest power forward in NBA history. Tim Duncan, David Robinson led the Spurs to their first and only championship in 1999. Then Greg Popovich, who is arguably one of the greatest coaches to ever coach the game, and his ability to identify talent, went out and found Tony Parker, found Manu Ginobili, and they won 2003, 2005, 2007, right? Then Greg Popovich was able to pick out and identify talent, saw Kawhi Leonard on the Indiana Pacers and said, hold up, we'll give you George Hill for Kawhi Leonard, and made a great trade. And they extended that Spurs run to win another title in 2014. However, some recent moves that the Spurs have made, in my opinion, have them going in the wrong direction if winning a championship is the goal. You got to remember, after Tim Duncan, Parker, Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard was going to be the face of the franchise. When he decided to say, listen, I don't trust you all anymore. You've misdiagnosed my injury. I don't believe in what you all have been teaching me and been preaching to me over the years. I want out. Get me out of here. The one place that he talked about he wanted to go was LA. Greg Popovich, with that grudge, because the Lakers and Spurs got a big time rivalry. And Greg Popovich decided to say, you know what, I'm not sending you to LA. I'm going to send you anywhere but LA. Not only am I not going to send you to LA, I'm going to send you your butt out of the country and send them to Toronto. Well, we know how that played out as Kawhi Leonard won the championship last year. But what happened is doing that is that Greg Popovich's ego was the downfall of the Spurs and their future of winning another championship. When you trade Kawhi Leonard, who's a superstar, everybody knows how great Kawhi Leonard is. You're never going to get equal value for trading away a superstar. So what you want to do is hit the reset button. Remember, you want to be 2 places, really good or really bad. You do not want to be stuck in the middle. That no man's land is nothing but mediocrity in there. We saw the Atlanta Hawks for years stuck there. The Washington Wizards for years stuck in mediocrity. And other teams. The Spurs have now found themselves in that lost land, that gray area, because they decided to, and this is Greg Popovich and his ego, he didn't want to rebuild. He's at the end of his coaching career. He didn't want to spend the last couple of years of his coaching career doing a rebuild. So he wanted to stay in the playoffs, stay consistently with this long 21, 22 years streak that they have. And I think that hurt the franchise. When they traded for DeMar DeRozan, who's nowhere near as good as Kawhi Leonard has proven he can be the best player on the championship team. DeRozan can't. Similar to Bradley Beal, similar to a John Wall, DeRozan cannot be the best player on the championship team, and neither can LaMarcus Aldridge. Those two, at best, are number two options. When you've got two guys on your team that are both number two options on a title team, you're stuck in mediocrity. And so what the Spurs should have done exactly what the New Orleans Pelicans just did. Mind you, look at the correlation and the irony behind this whole Pelicans deal. The Pelicans traded their superstar not for another all-star, not for a guy slightly below him like the Spurs did. Now, mind you, that's what Dale Demps wanted to do, because Dale Demps, who was under that Greg Popovich tree and had the ear of Greg Popovich, Popovich told him, trade him anywhere but LA. Do not trade Anthony Davis to LA. He didn't, and he lost his job for it. Griffin comes in. Griffin says, I'm willing to do deals with the Lakers because I want to put the best interests of the Pelicans first and foremost. Not the best interests of the Spurs, but the best interests of the Pelicans. Griffin traded Anthony Davis to the Lakers and got young picks and young players and draft picks. That's what you want to do. If the Spurs had traded Kawhi Leonard away to the Lakers or any other team that wanted to give them young players and draft picks, now you're hitting the reset. Now you're going to be worse than what they are. They wouldn't have made the playoffs the last couple of years. Like last year, they had healthy LaMarcus Aldridge, and you're the 7th seed, barely making the playoffs. Year before that, you had LaMarcus Aldridge, barely making the playoffs. Now, this is a team that has the best coach in the game, 2 healthy all-stars, and they're barely making the playoffs as the 7th seed in the West. Not getting out of the first round. Are we expecting DeRozan or Aldridge to all of a sudden now become number 1 option on title teams this year? No, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Are we expecting some of these young players that they have, that, these kind of gems that they found in DeJounte Murray and Derek White, Lonnie Walker, are we expecting these guys to become the best player on the championship team? I don't see that. I don't think, I've had people say Greg Popovich made Kawhi Leonard. He didn't make Kawhi Leonard. If he made Kawhi Leonard, he could make another Kawhi Leonard. Lonnie Walker won't become the next Kawhi Leonard. He didn't make Kawhi Leonard. He helped to shape and mold him. But it takes true talent. You got to identify true talent, which is one thing that Greg Popovich is great at. I give him that credit. DeJounte Murray, Derek White, these young guys that they have, imagine if they also had Alonzo Ball or a Brandon Ingram or a Kyle Kuzma alongside those young guys. And the number 4 draft pick that the Pelicans just got. Because it's the same package we offered the Pelicans, we offered to the Spurs. But Popovich didn't want to hear that. So my point in saying that is to say, the Spurs have now found themselves in a situation where you have all-stars that can't lead you to a title. You have a coach who's at the end of his career, and you've got young players who truly their growth is kind of limited because you have Aldridge and DeRozan who are going to take shot attempts and take playing time or opportunity away from these guys. How good could Derek White be? Well, right now he's going to be stuck in that Manu Ginobili role until maybe a DeRozan moves on or something. You got DeJounte Murray, you got Rudy Gay, a veteran who's going to be in that starting role. You bring another veteran, DeMar Carroll. So they're trying to keep status quo. The Spurs this year, in all honesty, I think they're going to be better than they were last year. I do think they'll be a better team than they were last year because they get a healthy Murray back. But I think they're going to have a worse record this year because the West is just passing them by. The Spurs will make the playoffs. I think I predicted them to be an 8th seed. But I think they'll have a worse record and a lower seed than even what they had last year, even having a better team this year. So my point in saying that is to say, if your goal is to win a championship, you've got to get 1 or 2 places. Really good or really bad. The Spurs had an opportunity to become really bad. You trade away Kawhi Leonard and you get those young players, you get those picks back. And maybe you're not as good as what you would have been these last couple of years. But you would have now had the young talent that's continuing to develop, continuing to grow, And that's how you get to be, for instance, the Pelicans, they're doing it the right way. They've got Lonzo Ball, they've got Brandon Ingram, they've got Josh Hart, they've got Zion Williamson, Nikhil Alexander Walker, Jackson Hayes. Like, they got a lot of young talent, and so they're putting themselves in a position where they're only going to peak and those young talent can grow together. The young talent for the Spurs, they can't grow with DeRozan and Aldridge. They got a couple more years with DeRozan and Aldridge in those roles that they're in before somebody's got to move out the way. Derek White, DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, for them to grow to the full max, somebody's got to get out the way. Is Jakob Poeltl going to become the next Tim Duncan? I'm not saying it. This is what you got back in exchange for Kawhi Leonard. It wasn't good enough. So if the Wizards and the Spurs ever want to become champions again, because the Wizards won back in the 70s, Spurs won back in 2014, you have to have a superstar. Tim Duncan was that superstar. Kawhi Leonard was that superstar. How do you get another superstar, especially when both of these franchises, here's the key, both of these franchises are not free agent destinations for superstars. What is the last superstar that ever went to either one of those teams? Don't worry, I'll wait. If the Spurs want to get that, they got to draft it or they got to trade for it. How are you going to do that? The Wizards are stuck there with bad contracts. Now, I will say this. The caveat to that, the Bradley Beal deal is this. If they're able to take Bradley Beal, who they kind of locked him in for these next couple of years, and then you have the 2-year extension as well. So basically, they got him locked in for the next 3 years. Now, they have to wait 6 months before they can trade him, based on the timeline of the deal that was given to them. And that's going to put them after the All-Star break. So basically, looking at next summer before they can even get an opportunity to trade him. So they're about a year away from being able to trade him. If they locked him up to be able to trade him, I respect that. That's what the Wizards needed to do. They needed to trade Bradley Beal away, hit the reset button. You're not going to win with Bradley Beal and John Wall as your two best players. I'm sorry. You can't trade John Wall because of his contract. So you have to build around someone other than Bradley Beal. He's the only trade asset that you have. If you're building around Beal, you're hamstrung. Because you got Mahinmi's contract, you got John Wall's contract, and then you can't attract free agents. So you gotta be really bad. The Wizards will be really bad this year, so they're gonna get a draft pick. But giving Bradley Beal, potentially paying him $266 million over 5 years, that's over $50 million a season. $50 million a year, potentially, in a couple years. That's not worth it for a bona fide all-star, but not a superstar. The Spurs, like I said, Greg Popovich is one of the greatest coaches to ever coach the game. They know how to build a championship team, but I think Greg Popovich's ego to want to stay playoff relevant before he retires, I think that hurt them. I think that set them back. So they're going to have to get really bad, like they were when they got Tim Duncan. They're going to have to get that kind of bad before they get another superstar. Because the free agents aren't going to come there. They're not going to come there. When Greek Freak in 2021 comes up, he's not going to choose to go to the San Antonio Spurs. I'm willing to put money on that. He won't choose to go there. So they got to draft him or you got to trade for him. What trade assets do you have? Unless you're going to take all those young guys. Now, if you want to take a DeJounte Murray, a Lonnie Walker, a Derek White, trade those young guys for a shot at a 1 or 2 year window of being really good to get a star, now that could work. That's not what they're going to do. That's not what the Spurs have shown over the years. That's what they do. So they work through the draft. Let's see how that works out for them. What do you think? Do you think that the Spurs or the Wizards are headed in the right direction? Or do you think they're headed in the wrong direction in terms of being able to win a championship? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, I appreciate you for taking a look at this video. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and tap that notification bell so that you can stay updated with the journey of a Ballaholic.